Hi, this is Tom Mahairas, and I want to talk to you about something that is really incredibly important. The Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 1 through 16, probably the most important message on this planet spoken by Jesus Christ, and not only Matthew 5, 1 through 16, but chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, which is referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. But he gave in the first 16 verses, in the first beginning of this introduction, who this blessed person is, who this happy person is. Everyone in the world wants to be happy. I did a survey way back 45 years ago when I first became a believer. I went down to CCNY, the New York college here, and I was asking students, what do you want out of this life? And every single person, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. Well, Jesus Christ gives the recipe, gives the ingredients of what this happy person is all about. In the Greek language, Makarios, Makar, just this happy, blessed person. And it's really talking about the qualities. It doesn't talk about his money. It doesn't talk about his education. It doesn't talk about his upbringing. It talks about the type of person, the type of character this person has. And he starts out and he talks about, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, verse 3, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, ptochos, totally bankrupt. He comes to a point of total bankruptcy and realizes he needs help and reaches out to another source and power beyond himself. And then he says in verse 4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted, those who break inside over their own sin and the sin of others. Blessed are the gentle, or the praise, those who have been able to, not weakness, but meekness, harness the resources that they have and bring them under control to be able to control your thinking, your speaking, your living, your acting, your walking. Blessed are the poor in spirit, or gentle, also used, praise, for they shall inherit the earth. And then he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they shall be satisfied. This is a person that is not, doesn't have it. That's why he's hungry. You're hungry when you don't have something. And thirsty. When you're thirsty, you drink something. So God says, we're hungry and thirsty for righteousness, and then we'll be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Those who have learned to forgive other people and look over the trespasses of other people and are merciful, they too shall receive mercy. It says, blessed are the pure in heart, katharos, for they shall see God. This is where we get the word catheter from. Those who, that doesn't mean you have a clean heart or have never been dirty, but that means that you desire that clean heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. They once were dirty, but now they've been purged. They've been purified. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. These are the peace, the people that go about making peace and seeking to be peaceful. Blessed are those who have been persecuted, the diogmeni, from Yoko, to chase away those who have been persecuted for the cause of righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who have been who insult you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely on account of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. So they have persecuted the prophets who were before you. So this person is not your typical person. I mean, these are not typical thoughts. This is quite contrary to the what people think that happiness comes from. Having strength, having education, having money, having everything going well. No, this is the external aspect. Jesus is talking about the internal aspect of a person, the character of this person. And then he uses two metaphors to kind of describe this character. He uses the salt and he uses the light. Now, he says, you're the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how will it be made salty? It is good for nothing anymore except to be thrown out and trampled under the foot by men. That's verse 13, Matthew 5:13. And then verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do men light a lamp and put it under a peck measure, but on a lampstand, that it will give light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Let me just give you briefly what I think these two metaphors are all about, these two pictures, these two insights that Jesus says about this person who's got a character on the inside that is going to create a life that is happy, that is blessed, that is really that really from God's perspective, from Jesus' perspective, is the person who is happy. Now, both of these illustrations, salt and light, speak of influence. One negative, the other positive. G. Campbell Morgan said that the world needs salt because it is corrupt, and it needs light because it is dark. John MacArthur said, we are God's salt to retard corruption and his light to reveal the truth. One functions in a negative way, the other in a positive. One is silent and the other is verbal. By the indirect influence of the way we live, we retard corruption, and by the direct influence of what we say, we manifest the light. It's interesting also to note some things about this passage of scripture and these two metaphors. The metaphors reflect the character of the citizen of the kingdom. Several times Jesus said, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is the kind of person that allows God to rule his life, that allows the Spirit of God to rule his life, that allows the law of the king to rule his life, that allows the king to be the king in his life. This is that kind of a person. That's one thing, that the context is very important. It's speaking about character and how our life will become like, is, not just reflects or is like salt in the earth or is like light in the world. We are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. Incredible. Even as physical salt has certain properties, spiritual salt, which we are, has certain properties. But let's talk about the light, moving on to the second illustration. You notice that in the context in verse 14, a city set on a hill. First it starts with, you are the light of the world. But then it goes to a city set on a hill. And then it goes to nor do men light a lamp and put it under a peck measure, but on a lampstand it gives light to all who are in the house. So it goes from the world to the city to the house to the heart. You see, it goes from the macro to the micro. Light fills up the universe. There are trillions of lights, trillions of galaxies, billions and billions and billions of stars. But God created the moon to rule the day, rather the sun to rule the day and the moon to rule the night. And then he made the stars also. That's the physical light. But here he's talking about the spiritual light. And there are several things I want you to take notice. So number one, the illustration or the metaphor, the significance, the identity of who we really are. We are the light. Coming out of the context of the character of the blessed person. And the second thing is we're going from the macro to the micro. And then the lessons and the applications. Notice, nor do men light a lamp and put it under a peck measure, but on the lampstand that he gives light to all who are in the house. The purpose of light is to shine so people can see what's going on. The purpose of light is not to hide it in the closet or under the table, but to put it in the right place. The positioning, the placement of the light is to be in the darkness. Now, this is where I would like to go to the Gospel of John, where we're told in John's Gospel several things. It talks about light for the mind in the first few verses, It talks about in John chapter 1, and love for the heart. Later on in John 3, liberty for the body in John 8, and then life for the spirit in later on in this passage. And notice what it says, that it says in verse 4, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. John chapter 1, verse 4. So the life of Jesus is the light of men, all men. And then in verse 5 it says, and the light shines in the darkness. That's the purpose of light, to shine in the darkness. And then the darkness did not overpower it or comprehend it. Catalamvano, to literally wrestle it down to the ground. No, the darkness can never win over the light. A little bit of light in the midst of all the darkness overpowers the darkness. And so this first take on this passage of scripture in Matthew's gospel in chapter 5, beginning with the Beatitudes, we see several things about the believer. We see that God calls us salt, he calls us light. And then he says, let your light shine in such a way so others may see your good works. So he's talking about not physical light, he's talking about spiritual light. And he says that our light from within, our character, our life is to shine in such a way so that the people all around us will see our good works. And the light is not to attract people to us, but to glorify our Father who's in heaven. God help us to continue shining. I'm going to come back and give you part 2.